Hello and welcome to Let's Talk with Thomas and
Greg.
this week we're talking with Julia Carr.
It's Julie Carr.
Julie Carr. Okay, okay. You know more about her, Greg.
Yeah, so she is my brother-in-law's mother, and she's also a local progressive from Redondo Beach. She has a lot of opinions, and I love it. What's really cool about her is, she is a Gen. What's the one after Boomer?
Gen X.
Gen X, and like her values are like a lot different from a typical Gen Xer. So you're a millennial, I'm a Gen Z, so we're about to have 3 generations up in this bitch. So let's get started. Hello, and so now we're gonna bring our guest, Julie Carr. Please welcome. Hello.
Hello.
So today we're gonna talk about a quick discussion on critical race theory. We'll show a clip basically defining what it is. And I really like it because it defines it, and it also shows the fear mongering that the right is trying to do with it. So we'll go ahead and show it right now.
Let's just start with a basic definitional question. When you hear critical race theory over and over again, what should people understand? How do you define CRT?
So I first want to just make a distinction between CRT, which is a theoretical framework that I learned in graduate school and read about in graduate school, versus teaching about race and racism in American history critically. So critical race theory is a framework. It's a theoretical framework that was developed in the 1980s by legal scholars to help us understand how it is that structural and racial disparities endure in our society, and how that is actually engendered in some of our laws and policies. And so the idea was to get us to think systemically, as opposed to just thinking that racism manifests by individuals just mistreating each other, that there are actual structures in our society that create these different kinds of racial gaps and racial disparities economically, in terms of housing, in terms of education. And so that's what they do, is that they actually show us how the law, how laws that are supposed to be neutral actually can promulgate or support racial disparities. That's a theoretical framework. I think what we're talking about today, though, is some contestation and conflict over how you teach about race, racial hierarchies, critically, racism in schools and society. And so the two are being conflated.
And so when you hear people talking repeatedly about critical race theory, what is your thought?
Well, I hear people talking about critical race theory. I see that as a straw man for many communities, politicians particularly, trying to shape the knowledge base and what we teach students. I think that there is some fear about raising consciousness about structural inequality, about structural racism, because it does implicate many of our practices in our society. It indicates what we would have to do differently in government. And some of that is ideological, in terms of there's a lot of resistance to how we do things to be fairer and more just in our society. So, there are a number of, I read a really good article just yesterday in the New Yorker about the origins of this conflict and who's behind it. And it's a concerted effort by many on the right to mitigate the extent to which we really augment and increase the understanding of racism in our society.
So, Julie, I wanted to get your thoughts on, after watching that clip, what are your thoughts on the actual definition, and what do you think about how the right is trying to fearmonger with the idea that critical race theory is being taught in our schools when in fact it's not?
Well, I would challenge anybody, right or not right, to understand the true definition, right? When critical race theory, the topic came out, I didn't even know what it was, right? I didn't take it in college, I didn't know what it was. So I actually did my research. I think we're in a state right now, the divide is everybody jumps on their side, so to say, and they're really not even informed. So I think that video is really amazing. It's only 3 minutes, but it's still giving such a clear understanding of what is this, and is somebody fighting to put critical race theory in our schools? No. Was it ever there? No. So why are you spending money on the right to put something on the ballot to take away something that's not there? It's so stupid. It's so hateful. It's so ugly. I just feel like the right is made up of some pretty ugly human beings, hateful human beings, and they are now allowed to be out and proud of their racism, of their hate, and fighting groups of people, their neighbors, their fellow countrymen, I don't know, to not teach the truth. That, like, how do you not find that just odd? I mean, I told you earlier, I grew up going to school, coming home, my mom asked me, what did you learn today? I'd tell her, and she'd spend an hour or so teaching me the truth. No, that's not true. That's not how it's happened. This is how it happened, and this is what happened, and this was the result. And I did the same for my kids, and I know now Brandon is doing the same for his kids. So I think that's one way to organically get through this, right? Of teaching critical race theory, or teaching systemic racism, or teaching about the racism that has happened historically and is here today, right? There's so many things that we can be teaching our young people.
I have gotten kicked out of class because I argued to my teacher that no, slavery was the reason why the Civil War happened. She was like, no, it was states' rights. So the next day, I bring out a piece of paper.
Did you read all of the articles of secession from each state? Because they'll make you want to.
I highlighted them. I highlighted where it's specific.
Texas is the grossest, but yes,
it is. But I pulled up the first one, which was, I think, South Carolina. South Carolina was, we here, the state of South Carolina, secede from the United States of America to join the Confederacy of the States of America, and the sole purpose of not being able to yada yada. I highlighted it.
Own human beings as property.
Yeah, I took them to the counselor's office.
Yeah.
What pisses me off is the whole fact that they're saying that it's being taught and it's not. Now, one can argue that ethnic studies is being taught. Yes, it is. In fact, the state of California just made it a high school requirement. Yay. But ethnic studies is not critical race theory.
Right.
Thomas, please give me your thoughts.
I honestly believe that it's not really about it's not really about this thing supposedly that's being taught in schools. It's about people becoming more aware of this country's past, becoming more aware of things are not okay in this country, becoming more aware of inequalities getting out of control. And then when you, any time in history, when you look at mass inequality growing over time, it creates this social pressures, and people liken this country moving towards what Germany went through with Nazism. I actually argue that America's reverting back to 1891, when you had the Pinkertons, when you had company towns. America is just resetting itself, or going through, or trying to reset itself in a way that claws back every bit of gain that normal working, or just people in general, have gotten to where we are today. And there is a contingent in this country, and it's not just about this country, it's around the world also, that
it is,
that is fighting to halt this advance in people believing that we need to change something because the system is not working for the majority. And little cultural wars like this that the right do, and and the center also kind of fuels it also, because they're not actually tackling the root cause of the problem. They're just grandstanding. And
see, what Republicans do is that they see the problem, they ignore it, they say it's not real, whatever, like you said earlier.
yeah,
And then Democrats are like, yes, it's a problem we must tackle. Climate change is real, racism is real, we must do something about it. And they're like,
they don't do anything.
what?
Yeah, or they do something that is just symbolic, like kneeling with kente cloth.
Yeah.
But that,
Don't get me going on this
Or
symbolic ones. I'm not impressed. Yeah.
And this is the problem, because people who might be might be good-natured people, or they're not necessarily awful people, are buying into this mentality that as long as we just hit the middle ground and like try and come to a reasonable understanding with people who literally want to kill somebody, that there is a compromise here, and we need people to realize that there is not a compromise to fascism. There's not a compromise to shooting someone in the streets. There's not a compromise to literally banning someone's way of life, or banning the idea of this person existing. There's just not a compromise there. And unfortunately, a lot of good-natured people are falling into the trap of this. I like to call it the extreme center, which is what we're getting right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it's a comfort. They're falling into it because it's a comfort.
Yeah.
I was raised to be anti-racist and became more and more anti-racist as I aged, I guess you could say. And I'm now finding family, friends becoming less and actually more comfortable in their privilege, right? Like I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to rock my friends. I don't want to, and I'm seeing this comfort level, and I'm becoming infuriated because I feel like it needs to go to the other level. And that's that center, in my opinion. They're not deemed racist, but they're certainly not anti-racist. So they're comfortable with it, status quo. They're very comfortable with Joe Biden. I mean, I had somebody I love dearly that my eyes opened wide when I said, I can't listen to Biden on the TV. And she snapped at me and was like angry. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? I like, really? And then I kind of noticed some other things, that passive, quiet, the silence is violence kind of persona. And she's fallen into that. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Am I seeing this for real? Like, are my people not my people? I'm angry. I need to stay angry, and I need to not be tired. I'm now learning that I don't want to fall into that baby boomer category where those people are tired. They're tired. They fought a big fight. They're comfortable. Their retirement is kicked in. They're not, nothing's happening to them. They're good to go. And so they're done fighting. And I think that's that's part of that middle as well.
And then retire and let me take the job. Let's do it.
I had this conversation with my mom. It's a long time ago now, but she grew up very poor. She had to use a food bank when she was a kid. She had to get help from the local church at the time. Horrible, I won't go into it. It's quite a horrible situation. But even though she grew up extremely poor, she was able to get an education and buy an apartment, right? And when you see the difference between someone back then and someone today, the idea of somebody who grows up poor right now and being able to actually own and buy your own apartment is just non-existent.
No, it's not.
Non-existent.
I don't think I'll ever be able to own my own apartment.
Right. And so this is the generational divide between what is like the social contract has been broken, right? The idea that someone, even if you have it so bad growing up, you can still somehow attain some sort of stability in your life later on. You can get there, but that is just gone. The social contract has been ripped up. And so when the social contract is ripped up like that, And you have generations of people now wondering whether we can actually retire or even ever retire, or even, will I have a house when I retire? Or I don't know what's going to happen. And they see this. The problem is the people, and particularly on the right, they know that there's social unrest. They know that the current system is causing this social unrest, and they're doing everything possible to divert the unrest into other territories, like we said before about the culture war, and like other areas where it doesn't affect the status quo. It doesn't affect what's happening and how we're progressing as a society.
Yeah. So Julie, I just want to go ahead and thank you for coming on the show. You have a little bit an online business. It is Pre-Loved Clothing. Tell us what Pre-Loved is and promote your stuff.
It's time to normalize pre-loved clothing. If you care about the environment and you don't know what the clothing industry is doing to our planet, please do your research. It's not pretty. Whether it's filling landfills, filling empty deserts, poisoning the waters, polluting the air, fast fashion is destroying our planet pretty quickly. So I've gone into the pre-loved clothing rather than just donating it to Goodwill or throwing it in the trash. I resell it to somebody that's totally comfortable buying pre-loved clothing, whether they do it thrifting or through me. So I go sourcing at yard sales and estate sales, and I sell everything. I mean, clothing, shoes, handbags, accessories. I'm actually my business plan to get out of corporate America is I'm going to take it one step further. So I want to open up a no-kill clothing shelter, meaning everything that I find either I can resell, or if it's ripped, torn, or stained, I'm going to make it into something else. So I've created really cool crafts for kids where I'll cut strips of material in different colors, do a pattern on a waffle board, and they can weave and tie it into something they can hang on the wall.
Wow.
I can do fabric, paper mache on terracotta pots to decorate those, right? Old beat up belts around wall clocks to make a masculine accessory in the house. So that's my ultimate goal. I'm feeling pretty good about it. There's some companies out there right now that are doing it with tons of clothing that they put through a process and make new material, which is pretty cool. So it's a thing right now. My little business is just, that's for my savings so I can put my grandkids to through college. But it's a fun hobby, but I'm really passionate about it. And when you start researching what the clothing industry does to our planet, it's frightening.
Yeah, and you can go check this out in the description below. Hold on, let me see if I remember. It's Jules_Gems_67_.
Yes, that last underscore is because I'm old and I don't even know how.
So go check her out. Thank you so much for joining on, and next Monday for another episode of Let's Talk with Greg
and Thomas.
Bye.
Bye.